Wow, what an introduction. I mean, just going through all those accolades makes me feel
Yeah.
like I need a pay rise. I've seen us win a lot of silverware over the years. But when you assume the role of head of cricket for a network like Star, yeah, I mean, as a young Australian
Yeah.
growing up, we're an outdoor nation.
But you were talking about having a great production team. Now I want to touch upon your mental health for a second, because you can't always be 100%, right? Even if you love your job, you can't really be 100%. But you come and then you have a whole team to look after. You have yourself to look after. You have people around you to look after. So how do you get into the zone? After leaving the hotel room or leaving your house, how do you get into the zone of, right, I have to do my job. I can't feel this way and I have to get
Mm.
on with it.
Yeah, it's true. It's a good point. And I think the mental well-being of well, my family, my friends, my colleagues is paramount.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think if someone's in a good place, uh, personally, they're going to produce a better standard of work.
Right.
Certainly in the office, we focus a lot in our business on content, but who makes that content?
Mm-hmm.
It's human beings. So we've got to make sure we look after our fellow colleagues so that they're in the best headspace to be able to throw an immense amount of passion and
Yep.
enjoyment into their work. But for me personally, how do I mean, for many years, and when I was an executive at News Corp and running a news channel with 150 plus people, I'd wake up at 5:15 every morning. I'd go and do a CrossFit session for 1 hour at 6 a.m. to 7. And that was my start to the day, right? I'd push weights, I'd exercise, I'd do these metabolic workouts. I was absolutely spent, but I knew that I'd started the day with a win.
Right.
No one could take that away from me.
Mm-hmm.
So I could come to work and feeling like I'd already made some notable accomplishments.
Right.
And there are plenty of studies into the neurological benefits as well of lifting, pushing weights,
Mm-hmm.
cardiovascular exercise. So taking care of myself physically is the best way that I can sort of achieve professionally.
Right.
I'm conscious about my diet. But I guess one of my saving graces is high quality caffeine. I'm a coffee snob,
Right.
and coffee gets me through
Right.
many a moment.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I relate to you completely apart from the caffeine. I don't really like coffee, but when I start off my day with a workout and when I'm on a good diet, which I'm consistently almost in, I feel like I've already won. Like I won the day, I made it, and the rest of the day is just a bonus. And that just feels so great. But now I want you to take me through. So, by the way, for those of you listening and for those of you viewing, the test match is going on again. India against New Zealand. The test match is going on, and he's in the middle of that. So he's taken his time out, by the way. So kudos and thank you so much for that. But take me through a day of what it's like to be part of a production team. What do you guys do? Not only in a test match, but it can be anything. During the World Cup or Wimbledon or the US Open, anything. But what is it for you on a day of a sporting event?
So for any successful production,
Mm-hmm.
a great producer galvanizes the team well beforehand. So you have to lay down your vision. What it is do you want to achieve in the said production? What do you want your audience to think and feel?
Mm-hmm.
How are we going to increase their passion? How are we going to increase their wisdom? How are we going to make them stay watching? How are we going to make them share our content and talk about us? And that all starts in the pre-production process.
Mm-hmm.
So we have like some pretty meaty content ideation sessions. And we ask ourselves, what I said to you earlier about what does the audience need to know right now? What's truly important? So we look at narratives, and then we look at creative treatments. How are we going to tell these stories? Because the data and the presentation and the information is only a small portion.
Mm-hmm.
In this day and age, the presentation of that information is what truly counts. That's what people remember.
Mm-hmm.
So we're trying to revisit the way we tell stories as well, by using emojis, by relating to younger audiences. Always skew young. I've got this belief that our older audiences will always watch.
Right.
But our younger audiences are far more discerning and more selective about what it is that they'll choose to watch. And then we look at things like, what does our studios look like? What mixed reality and augmented reality graphics do we want to use? I'm now very much aligned with the thinking that our talent should be interacting with graphics in the studio.
Right.
So with hand and motion and gesture control, bringing content into their space and interacting with that content, and then moving on and finding something, and then bringing something else.
Right.
I'm also big on robust and opinion, conversation, and I think our viewers learn a lot about sport and the heroes and the villains and the subplots through the the meaty conversations that come by our experts. So, and then there's somebody in my role as the head of cricket, I've got to look after morale. I've got to make sure that
Right.
people are being told that when they're doing a good job, or perhaps when we're not hitting the standard of work that we should be regarded for. So just honest assessments, encouragement, but just consistency, making sure that people know that they're part of a valued team, but be firm but fair.
Right, but I'm sure there are times like Pratib and I are just a team of two, but there are times when we have conflict, right? We have different ideas, different processes. So when it comes to you and being the head of cricket yourself, and when you see there are different conflicts among the team and different creative ideas, and that's where there's a conflict, how do you come to resolving that? Do you make a compromise, or do you select, or is it a gut feel? How do you come up with how do you decide on what to do?
We just workshop. We just road test it and workshop. I mean, I like conflict of ideas, because that denotes passion,
right?
To me, because there are sometimes, you can say there are right and wrong ways of doing things, but I think more importantly, there are just better ways of doing things.
Right. Fair.
So, and I take the view that when we have editorial meetings, everyone should be involved in the conversation and just thrash out ideas. Everyone in this building is a cricket fan. Everyone in this building is a sports fan,
right? And
everyone should have a voice. And I don't want to shout down anyone's voice. I don't want to say someone's got a bad idea or immature idea.
Right.
But it's like, what in this day and age, how are we going to ignite the interest of our audience? How are we just going to get them to stay that little bit longer? If they're watching with the sound down, what are we going to do visually that gets them to turn the volume up? These are all the little techniques that we need to think about.
Right. That's.
But when it comes down to it, if there's a 50-50 call and there's an argument to say, well, we need to take this narrative on this player, and there's another very solid counter argument, then it might come to me to say, well, in my opinion, this is what. I mean, you have to make an executive call.
Yeah, I mean that's very healthy too, right? That's a very healthy way to go about it. Now let's take a step back to your younger self, because I'm very curious. If you could go back to the 12-year-old self who wanted to be a fighter pilot, what would that 12-year-old self not like about you right now?
What would he not like?
Yeah.
I would hope that he would like everything about me right now, because I'm really happy with the person that I am. I'm really happy with the decisions that I've made. So I'm probably going to blow your question out of the water, because it's coming across as you're trying to look at my deficiencies.
No, I'm not. I just wanted to see if there were any difference in personalities. And
look, I'm just the type of guy that every decision I've made has been for a reason. Right. I don't regret a single thing I've done. Not one.
Wow, that's a good way to go.
I'm a contented man. I'm happily married. I've got 2 great daughters. I've got a great job. I live in a dynamic city. I work in one of the best sports in the world, and one of the best broadcasters in the world. Everything I've done has led me to this point. So
that's so beautiful.
I'll take my lot. I'm happy, man. I'm speaking to you guys. What else can
What else? I mean, it's great for us. But thank you for saying that. But wow, man, that's such a good way to go about your life. But right, you've had a great life, and you're also very ambitious. You've done a lot of things. You've started your own business called Brand You with your colleagues. But if I were to ask you, what's one passion of yours and one strong passion of yours, what would you say that is?
Traveling.
That's interesting.
I've traveled extensively. I mean, my father's British, my mother's Dutch, so I have a couple of passports. I lived in London for 5 years. I had my firstborn in London.
Oh wow.
I live, my wife and I quit our jobs in 2015 and bought a one-way ticket to Mexico. I took our kids out of school, bought a car in Mexico City, and drove throughout Central America and put our kids in a school in Costa Rica. and then we moved from Costa Rica to Mumbai. So I think if you talk about passion, I think it's the sense of adventure.
Are you going to leave Mumbai soon? Because I don't think anyone, at least in the world of star sports and us viewers, would want that. But are you planning to do that anytime soon?
Not anytime soon.
That's
You know,
fine.
I've just I'm very satisfied. I just signed a contract that'll keep me here for a couple of years. We've got a tour of South Africa coming up after this New Zealand
Yes.
series. We've got a mega auction in January. Then we have the home series. We have an extended 10-team IPL. We have an Asia Cup. We have
Oh,
another T20 World Cup in Australia in October.
right.
Then there's 2023 50 over World Cup as well. So there's plenty of cricket to keep me occupied. So
That's great
yeah.
news. Keeps me very happy. But this is a good question. This is a good way to ask my next question, because you're already looking forward to the ODI World Cup. So when
Mm,
you plan, especially
mm.
in a production team or in a company like Star Sports, how far do you have to look? Because right, like you said, you have test matches right now. After this, you have the South Africa series and then the T20 World Cup and the IPL. So, but how far do you look forward? Because you also have to produce quality content right now, right?
Yeah. I mean, we're always looking at um, we have production coordinators, production managers who are looking months and months in advance.
Mm-hmm.
So we were planning New Zealand, during the IPL, for example. We planned South Africa
Oh,
at the back end of
okay.
IPL into the World Cup because you've got to organise, visas and
Mm-hmm.
travel documentation. You need to, we'll be sending crews for Hindi and English to South Africa. So there's quite a lot of administration that needs to be done. We need to have dialogue with the Cricket South Africa,
Right.
Supersport, who are the host broadcaster. So, yeah, when you can plan as much as the information that you have at your disposal. So, from the actual event organisers and administrations that are staging these events. I'm always looking at what personnel we want to deploy on these major events, and I'm always keeping an eye to who's the next big thing and the next big voice in cricket,
Mm-hmm.
and which anchors do we want to furnish our coverage.
Oh, that's interesting. It's also interesting. You're part of the Hindi and the other languages
Mm,
production. My question is related to that. Like you said, you were in Australia, you were also in England, and then you came to
mm.
India, which is very culturally different. And so, was it difficult for you to adjust and cater to the audience, or understand what the viewers like?
Yeah, it is because there was, when I first came to Star, and there were some segments that went to air, and I thought that's really interesting. I don't think I ever would have put something like that to air in Australia. But this was my naivety because I didn't
Right,
understand that Indian audiences love that sense of play, and they're
hmm,
so celebrity driven.
right.
They love their
That's
icons,
true.
and
Yeah.
and the number of Bollywood integrations and movie integrations that we do
Hmm.
with cricketers. I mean, there's this real affinity between cricket and Bollywood, and
Yeah.
so that's been a real eye opener for me. So yeah, absolutely. I need to stay agile, and I
Hmm.
need to really understand what it is that our audiences need. And I learn from my colleagues every day
Hmm.
as to how we tailor content to our audiences. And it depends what you are. Audiences in the South,
Yes. Oh,
have
yeah. Yeah.
different tastes and needs and
Yeah.
wants than say those of the Northeast.
Yep,
Uh,
definitely.
so learning about markets, learning about the demographics it's a steep learning curve,
Hmm.
but
I
an
don't know if,
enjoyable one.
yeah, I don't know if I'm proud of it or not, but yeah, I mean, it's interesting. The country itself is interesting. Now, last couple of questions, just because of
Mm,
the time constraint, like I said, he's between a test match. But I asked you about future goals for network itself, but this might sound like an ambiguous question, but it's a question for you. How do you go about setting your personal goals? Is it you look forward, or you go with the flow? You just go with the flow. Like you said, a one-way ticket to Mexico. Do you
mm.
always do things like that, or do you have a flow chart in mind of where do you want to be in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years?
Yeah, I mean, I'm lucky that I've been married 24 years.
Wow.
I know,
Oh,
and you're 21, right? Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So
That's exactly what I thought.
I've got a life partner. So
Yeah.
Rachel is her name. She's an absolute gem, and
That's beautiful.
we have this incredible sort of synchronicity
Hmm.
between us, and we view life as just one big odyssey,
Right.
and life's about creating memories. Now, I don't have, and I certainly don't live life by a manual or in a prescribed sort of method. So I plan as best I can, but only in very short chunks. I guess I plant some seeds, mentally as to what I want to do professionally.
Right.
And I think I always wanted to work in India on cricket, or is it working on cricket in India? And so, subconsciously I was, plotting and planning and to make sure that eventuated. But what will Gary Burchett's life look like in 3 years' time? Where will I be? That I don't know. And I don't have a firm idea as to what it looks like. I'm really satisfied with my lot now. I'm getting my kids through, the 10th and 12th grades at school. And so my immediate focus is making sure that I set them up so that when they leave, they've got a broad view of the world and a strong education behind them.
That's so beautiful. I think I'll hold on to that. Life is about creating memories. I'll have to remind myself that every day I'm getting tensed and anxious. But thank you so much, Gary. Before we end this episode, this is how we usually end this episode, just because we do. Now I already know the answer, but because we end it like this, are you a tea or a coffee person?
I am a coffee person.
But have you tried that? Have you tried tea? Do you like tea?
Of course.
Okay, good.
I love my tea. I mean, I'm usually an Earl Grey with a little bit of milk, but I do drink, masala chai. I love it with an extra bit of ginger and the cardamom.
Yes.
So in the Indian spice teas, bring it on.
I love to hear that. Oh, I wish Pratap was here. He would have loved to hear that as well. Gary, thank you so much for giving your time between a test match. I know you have a lot of work to do, so thank you so much for coming in. It really means a lot. And I mean, it's because it's me. I could have asked questions forever and picked your brain until you wanted to cut the call. But the fact that you gave us 30 minutes is itself a very big deal. So thank you so much for
Pleasure.
that.
Lovely speaking to you, Ashwin, and thanks for listening to my story.
Yo, thanks for tuning into the latest episode of Just Baatein. We hope you enjoyed it and that it left you inspired. Thanks for all your support, and maybe you could support us just a little more by maybe going to our Instagram and Twitter and giving us a follow there. And also you can listen to us on all podcasting platforms, right from Spotify to Apple Podcasts to Google Podcasts. Cheers.